On May 26, 2025, at Kaohsiung Port, amid the grinding of cranes and the soft lapping of waves, something pale and shapeless drifted ashore. At first glance, it could have been mistaken for a buoy, but it wasn't. It was a human skull. Once investigators confirmed the identity, it was official. This was the third set of human remains in what Taiwan would call the Kaohsiung dismemberment case. A victim searched for days had finally returned from the sea, and her discovery would turn the entire investigation upside down. So where did it all begin? Today, we're diving into a serial murder and dismemberment case involving 3 victims that shocked an entire nation. What makes it even more chilling, both the killer and every one of his victims were over 70 years old, people who should have been enjoying their golden years in peace. What kind of darkness leads to something like this? Let's rewind to May 5, 2025. That day was the 6th day of the Lunar New Year, a time when most families were still wrapped in holiday warmth. But for a man named Mr. Zhao, that morning brought only dread. His mother, 71-year-old Ms. Lin, had received a phone call the night before, driven off on her scooter, and never came home. Her phone was unreachable. Then Mr. Zhao remembered something his mother used to tell him, almost like a quiet warning. "Son, I go to the park alone every day. If one day I don't show up, you go to the police, okay?" By 10 a.m., the family filed a missing persons report with the Nancy police station in Kaohsiung City. Recognizing Ms. Lin's age, officers immediately pulled surveillance footage. What they found, on the evening of May 4th, Ms. Lin picked up a short-statured man around 5:55 p.m. The two rode together to a private residence at number 2, Alley 14, Daolu Road, Chanzhen District, where they entered together. By 9 p.m. on May 5th, police located Ms. Lin's scooter still parked outside that address. Inside, living alone, was 73-year-old Zhang Jietong, the man from the footage. When questioned, Zhang claimed Miss Lin had visited briefly, then left. Police searched the house with his consent. No sign of her. But her scooter was still right there. So where did she go? Police went back to the surveillance footage, and what they found left no room for doubt. After Ms. Lin walked into Zhang Jietong's house, she never walked out. He was lying, and his behavior over the following hours made things even more suspicious. Between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. on May 5th, Zhang repeatedly left the house on his bicycle, making trip after trip to the Canal No. 5 area in Tianjin District, an artificial waterway not far from his home. 12 trips total. On 5 of them, his bicycle basket was weighed down with heavy black plastic bags. Every time he came back, those bags were empty. A neighbor also mentioned hearing strange noises coming from Zhang's house the night before. That was all police needed to hear. Ms. Lin had almost certainly met with foul play. At 8:50 p.m. on May 6th, officers arrested Zhang Jietong near his home. Forensic teams from the Kaohsiung City Police Department swept the house for evidence, and what they found was staggering. Blood stains, blood spatter, and biological material were scattered throughout, on the walls, the floor, the bathroom drain, even the towels. But here's what really changed everything. The DNA didn't just belong to Ms. Lin. There were 2 other unknown profiles in that blood. Zhang Jietong's house wasn't just a crime scene. It might have been a killing ground. Police hauled Zhang in for another round of questioning. He didn't budge. Still claiming he and Ms. Lin were just friends, still insisting he had no idea where she was, still saying those bags were nothing but old clothes he was throwing out. Nobody believed him. Investigators began cross-referencing recent missing persons cases to identify those 2 mystery DNA profiles. The first match, a 74-year-old woman surnamed Chang, nicknamed Fairy Aunt, from the Zhuoying district of Kaohsiung. Her daughter hadn't heard from her since April 14th, and the family had filed 2 separate missing persons reports on April 27th and again on May 1st. The second match, a 75-year-old woman surnamed Huang, who lived alone in Nancy district. She'd gone silent on October 27, 2024. Her son had reported her missing to police in New Taipei City that December, and Nansei officers had visited her home on December 24th and found nothing. Then came a detail that stopped investigators cold. Miss Huang wasn't just some acquaintance. She was Zhang Jietong's own sister-in-law. It turned out Zhang had lived in that Shenzhen house with his elder brother and sister-in-law until May 2024. After his brother passed away, Miss Huang moved to Nansei District, leaving Zhang alone in the house. With the DNA identified, police dug deeper into the surveillance footage. The records showed Ms. Huang had entered Zhang's house at around 12:10 p.m. on October 29, 2024, and was never seen leaving. Roughly 15 hours later, at 3:19 a.m. on October 30th, Zhang was captured on camera making multiple bicycle trips out of the house. As for Ms. Chang, she was spotted at Tamsui Park around 1 p.m. on April 17, 2025. By 2:30 p.m., she had entered Zhang's house with him and was never seen again. By 8:05 p.m. that same day, Zhang was on camera leaving with a black plastic bag. By 6 a.m. the next morning, he had already made multiple trips in and out. First Miss Huang, then Miss Chang, and now Ms. Lin, another elderly woman vanishing inside that same house in less than 20 days. There were no body parts found inside the home, but combined with the surveillance footage of Zhang hauling those plastic bags to Canal Number 5, investigators drew one conclusion. He had murdered and dismembered his victims, then made repeated runs to the canal to dump the remains. Starting May 6th, the task force deployed firefighters and dive specialists to search Canal Number 5 and the waters around docks 25 through 27 at Kaohsiung Port. Nets were stretched across the waterway to catch anything the current might carry off, and almost immediately they found 2 black plastic bags containing a human left foot, internal organs, and chunks of flesh roughly 10 centimeters in size. The remains were sent for identification as the search continued. One diver who worked the recovery later told reporters that most of what they pulled up was skin and fat, no bones, and because the pieces were so small, finding anything was agonizingly difficult. Even more heartbreaking, the son of one victim showed up at the debris collection area near docks 26 and 27 every single day. He brought fishing nets, he used his bare hands, and he found some of his mother's remains himself. DNA testing confirmed it. The salvage operation wrapped up on May 10th. In total, police recovered 24 body parts, the majority belonging to Ms. Lin, 1 piece of chest tissue belonging to Ms. Chang, and nothing at all from Ms. Huang. The victim who had been missing the longest was still nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Zhang Jietong sat in custody and stonewalled every single interrogation. Officers laid evidence directly in front of him, body parts, blood-soaked towels, and he didn't flinch. Kaohsiung Police Chief Lin Yantian personally looked him in the eye and warned him that people who commit crimes this monstrous would ultimately face execution. Zhang's response? Then just execute me. His cellmate later told reporters that Zhang spent most of his time sleeping or staring at nothing. When he was awake, he was quiet, completely, unsettlingly normal. Faced with a suspect who simply refused to talk, police shifted their focus entirely to building the case without a confession. On May 10th, they brought Zhang back to the crime scene, as legally required, and isolated him in a room where he could watch the evidence collection unfold, hoping the psychological pressure would crack him. It didn't. For 5.5 hours, from 11 a.m. to around 4:30 p.m., Zhang sat with a blank expression and said absolutely nothing. He refused the meal police offered. He refused to sign off on any of the seized items. Total silence, total control. But even without his cooperation, that search produced major breakthroughs. On May 13th, investigators held a press conference. Among the recovered evidence, a 20-centimeter pair of scissors and a 30-centimeter pointed knife, both carrying DNA from Ms. Lin and Ms. Chang. A metal mallet found at the scene tested positive for Ms. Huang's biological material. And then there were the papers, sheets Zhang had used for handwriting practice, discovered inside the house. Written on them were his own name and the names of 4 women. 3 of those names were his victims, Miss Huang, Miss Chang, and Ms. Lin. The fourth was someone still alive. Police tracked her down that same day. She was safe. Around that same time, rumors began circulating that Zhang Jietong had a younger brother who had also gone missing. People were wondering whether he too had fallen victim to his own sibling. Police investigated and confirmed the brother's name, Zhang Jietong. But the truth was stranger than anyone expected. Zhang Jietong wasn't a victim. He was a wanted fugitive, convicted of drug trafficking, and sentenced to 17 years in prison. He had never reported to serve his sentence and had been on the run for exactly 20 months. Police ramped up the manhunt. Then, on the afternoon of May 13th, the same day as the press conference, Zhang Jietong was arrested, just 700 meters from his brother's house, despite all the evidence piling up. As of May 21st, not a single piece of Ms. Huang's remains had been found among the 76 tissue samples recovered. Of those 76 pieces, 38 belonged to Ms. Lin. Her left palm, her feet, internal organs, serrated marks on her left cheek and palm, matched the steak knife seized from the house. From Ms. Chang, only scalp and chest tissue had surfaced. Police were running out of places to search and were close to calling off the salvage operation entirely. Then, on May 26th at Dock 26 of Kaohsiung Port, a skull broke the surface of the water. It belonged to Ms. Huang. Which brings us right back to where this story began. On May 19th, police had brought Zhang back to the crime scene for a second search. They recovered another metal mallet and a second pair of pointed pliers. Fresh bloodstains from all three victims were found, along with dried human tissue and a partial body part. As the police vehicle prepared to leave afterward, family members of the victims had rushed to the scene. After hearing the news, surged forward, trying to get to Zhang. They had to be physically restrained by officers. Residents nearby shouted that he deserved to be executed. And online, thousands more echoed that rage. The reason this case hit so hard, beyond the sheer horror of the crimes, wasn't just that the suspect and all three victims were elderly. It was something else entirely. Zhang Jietong had done something like this before. Back in 1972, Zhang was 20 years old and serving in the military when he fell in with two others, a 22-year-old named Chen Dehong and a 16-year-old teenager surnamed Lin. The three went out drinking together. Around 11 p.m. on October 21st, the group was having dinner at the Lin Family Night Market in Kaohsiung when Chen Dehong floated the idea of a robbery. Zhang didn't hesitate, and by that point, he already had a record. At just 16 in 1968, he'd been sent to a reformative institution for theft. That same year, he caught an attempted murder charge and was sentenced to 3 years and 2 months, then released early. So when Chen proposed the plan, Zhang was in. The three agreed to strike after 2 a.m. near a primary school on Fuxing 3rd Road. Both Chen and Zhang were carrying knives. Then a taxi rolled by with a female passenger inside. The three moved fast, blocked the car, forced their way in, and ordered the driver at knife point to head north on the Gonan Expressway. What started as robbery turned into something far worse. Inside the moving vehicle, the three began sexually assaulting the female passenger. When the car's movement made it difficult, they forced the driver to pull into a sugarcane field near the Nansei Central Industrial Zone, where the assault continued. Afterward, they forced the driver to keep going. Near a high school in Fengshan Town, they hit a police checkpoint. The driver seized the moment, jumped out and ran straight to the officers. Chen floored it. They made it into Kaohsiung's urban area and shook the pursuit. The three eventually stopped near a primary school, took 620 North 10 TD from the driver's car and 2,800 North TD from the woman's purse, then flagged down another cab and fled. But they didn't get far. Police caught up quickly. Witnesses came forward. physical evidence was solid, and all three confessed. The Kaohsiung District Court handed down death sentences to both Chen Daehong and Zhang Jietong. Both men appealed. The Tainan branch of the Taiwan High Court didn't budge. Death sentences upheld. But when the case reached the Supreme Court, everything changed. The justices found that the lower courts had failed to properly weigh certain legal details. Specifically, at one point during the crime, Zhang had suggested releasing the female passenger. Chen Daehong refused. That detail mattered. When the Supreme Court retried the case, Chen Daehong and the teenage accomplice kept their original sentences, but Zhang Jietong, deemed slightly less culpable than Chen, had his death sentence commuted to life in prison. And just like that, a man who should have been executed walked away with his life. After 25 years behind bars, Zhang Jietong was paroled in 1997 at the age of 45 and moved in with his elder brother and sister-in-law. Then in 2019, he was brought in again, this time for bicycle theft, but was never prosecuted. When his past came to light after the 2025 murders, public fury was immediate. A Tianjin resident told reporters bluntly, "This kind of person should have been executed from the start. Then none of this would have happened." Neighbors said that ever since the case broke, the whole community had been living on edge, full of elderly residents and women, all of them now afraid that Zhang might somehow walk free again due to insufficient evidence. Some were even angrier. "He will never change. You cannot give this man another chance." On May 28th, the investigation was formally concluded. The numbers told the story of the massive effort behind it. 377 officers mobilized, 2,855 surveillance feeds pulled, 9,441 video clips reviewed. 8 prosecutors and 4 judges were brought in, and 15 witnesses were interrogated. At the end of it all, the Kaohsiung District Prosecutor's Office formally requested the death penalty, charging Zhang Jietong with murder and abandonment of a body. Having escaped the death penalty once before, Zhang Jietong likely believed that silence was his best weapon, that if he just kept his mouth shut, he could slip through the cracks of the justice system one more time. But even without a confession, investigators and the media were able to piece together what happened inside that house. The picture that emerged was deeply disturbing. After his parole, Zhang had no steady income, no stable work. According to his younger sister Zhang Jietong, the Tianjin house was inherited from their parents. The 4 siblings had agreed that the eldest brother would take the property in exchange for sharing a portion of its value with the others. After his release, Zhang Jietong moved back in with his elder brother and sister-in-law. But Zhang Jietong painted a very different picture from what the media had reported. It wasn't a quiet arrangement, it was years of bitter conflict. Zhang Jietong clashed repeatedly with his brother and sister-in-law over the property, until eventually the entire family packed up and left the Tianjin area. After the elder brother died, the house was transferred into his son's name. Ms. Huang, the sister-in-law, apparently wanted to sell it and kept coming back to inspect the property and pressure Zhang to move out. Neighbors recalled him frequently complaining that she was trying to take the house from him. In 2024, he told someone the house was leaking and that he wanted to sell it himself, as though he genuinely believed it was his to sell. At some point, he told a friend at the park, "My sister-in-law won't be demanding the house back anymore." Even then, was the plan already forming in his mind? On November 29, 2024, Ms. Huang came to the house one more time. Whether they argued again remains unknown. But the forensic evidence told the rest of the story. Zhang strangled her with a piece of cloth, killing her by asphyxiation. He then used a 12-centimeter metal mallet and a pointed knife to dismember her body, storing the parts in the kitchen refrigerator. Through the night and into the early morning, he loaded the remains into black plastic bags and made repeated bicycle trips to the Tianjin Canal. Then he stole her bank card and withdrew 5,000 Newton-D. About a month after killing Ms. Huang, Zhang Jietong invited a friend and 5 others out for a meal of Vietnamese ginger-braised chicken. He showed up, but something was off. He came in, gave a quick hello, then went completely silent for the entire meal. He only drank the broth, didn't touch the meat. Everyone noticed. Not long after, he announced he was full and left abruptly. The whole thing struck his friends as deeply strange. It seemed the killing had left some kind of mark on him psychologically, but whatever discomfort he felt, it didn't stop him. If anything, he had developed a taste for it. Very quickly, he began hunting for his next victim. Zhang was a regular at Tamsui Park and Wanyan Park, popular spots where elderly residents gathered daily for exercise and socializing. People who knew him there called him Taipei Boy. He made a habit of befriending women at the park, using casual conversation to quietly probe their personal lives, particularly whether they lived alone. In early 2025, he met Ms. Chang, nicknamed Fairy Aunt, at Tamsui Park. He called her regularly, turned on the charm, and played the role of a caring, attentive friend. In just over 10 days, he had lured her to his home. On April 17th, he strangled her with a red cloth scrap, then used scissors and pointed pliers to dismember her body and bag the remains. The next day, he made his bicycle runs to dispose of everything. What had taken him over 10 hours after killing Miss Huang now took just 4 hours from the moment Miss Chang walked through his door. He was getting faster. The morning after, Zhang walked 200 meters from his house and bought oatmeal like it was any other day. Then he used Miss Chang's senior welfare card 13 times, swiping it for subway and ferry rides. Once again, no one caught him. No one even suspected, and that impunity only convinced him further. The plan was working. He could keep going. So like a man following a script he'd written himself, Zhang went back to the park looking for his next target. That target was Ms. Lin, the third victim. As it turned out, Ms. Lin and Ms. Chang had known each other. Zhang first called Ms. Lin on May 1st, and within a single day had already arranged to meet her at the park. Around that time, Ms. Lin mentioned to a friend that Taipei Boy had told her he was done with Fairy Aunt and was looking for someone new. After meeting at the park, Ms. Lin gave Zhang a ride home on her scooter. She never left. Zhang strangled her with a cloth rope. This time, his behavior was even more brazen. He used an electric clipper to shave the entire body before dismembering it with a 19.5 centimeter steak knife, pliers, and other sharp tools. Then, just like before, he made his rounds, bagging the remains and disposing of them piece by piece. By now, the whole process had become routine for him. Befriend a lonely elderly woman at the park, earn her trust, lure her to the house, strangle her, dismember the body, dump the remains. It's terrifying to think how many more women might have died if Ms. Lin's family hadn't reported her missing so quickly, or if police hadn't taken it seriously and moved fast. After the case broke, people who had known Zhang Jietong, neighbors, park acquaintances, even investigators, all said the same thing. They never saw it coming. One officer who worked the case put it plainly. In my personal opinion, he is the most ordinary old man you could imagine. If he lived next door to you, you would never suspect a thing. You'd never guess he had this kind of twisted psychology, because he just seemed so completely normal. And yet, looking back, there were always details that left people with a feeling they couldn't quite name. So what was driving him? At the most basic level, it came down to one thing: money. Zhang had no steady income, a long history of theft, and a gambling addiction he never kicked, yet he worked hard to project the image of a high roller. A friend known as Brother D recalled Zhang boasting about working on projects like Taipei 101, claiming he pulled in hundreds of thousands of NTD every month. He once blew through 4 million TD in lottery winnings at the gambling table. People at the park regularly watched him flash cash, pulling out 50,000 to 100,000 NTD at a time. His younger sibling noted that any mention of money sent him into an agitated state. That obsession was written all over his home: money-biting toad statues, money-coiled cobra figurines, and Lunar New Year couplets plastered on the walls praying for wealth. He had even applied for low-income household assistance, only to be rejected because he was already collecting over 1 million native NTD in labor insurance pension payments, a fact confirmed by Kaohsiung City Councilor Wu Ming-Su. A 73-year-old man, barely able to earn a living, still consumed by greed and a burning sense of deprivation. That toxic combination likely made his sister-in-law, the woman standing between him and the house he felt entitled to, the first to pay the price. But money was only part of it. Underneath was something darker, a need for sexual dominance and control. Relatives said he had a way with women, but it was all performance. In his youth, he had assaulted women. After prison, neighbors saw him standing naked on his second-floor balcony, making strange gestures. He dressed carelessly at home, but cleaned up neatly when going out. Two completely different people. After killing Miss Huang, he stripped her and filmed her. Most sex offenders show diminished urges with age. Zhang was the opposite. Each killing reawakened something in him, escalating from murder for financial gain to outright pleasure in domination and humiliation. Whatever he had suppressed for decades came completely unraveled in his final years. Taken together, Zhang Jietong was a textbook antisocial personality. No remorse, no regard for rules, methodical and cold in everything he did. He fed a deviant psychology behind closed doors while performing total normalcy in public. His home was where the monster lived. The outside world was just his stage. But if you think of Zhang Jietong simply as someone driven by greed or twisted desire, you're still missing the full picture. What makes him truly chilling isn't the violence itself, it's the cold, methodical calm underneath it. After killing Miss Huang, he immediately called a locksmith, then walked around the neighborhood playing the role of a worried relative, actively helping search for his missing sister-in-law and performing grief in front of anyone who would watch. One witness recalled it vividly. He said, "Oh no, what happened to my sister-in-law?" So I told him, "You should go to the police." He said, "Okay, I'll help you open the door." So I went up with the police. Honestly, looking at him, you'd never guess he was the kind of person they'd later report about in the news. In that moment, you'd actually feel like he was the one being wronged. After killing Ms. Chang, he spread a story that she had stolen his Rolex, a watch he claimed was worth 1.2 million nantidi. It explained away her disappearance and quietly cut any visible connection between them. None of this was impulsive. Every step was calculated. There's one more detail that neighbors found deeply unsettling in hindsight. Before the Lunar New Year in 2025, Zhang had suddenly repainted his balcony, walls, and iron window frames a vivid, striking red. It wasn't until the case broke that people wondered, was he covering up blood spatter? Even his method of disposal showed the same cold precision. The remains police recovered had no bones at all, only flesh and fat, meticulously cut into small pieces. Investigators believed he deliberately separated bone from flesh, dumping the flesh into the canal for fish and shrimp to consume, while mixing the bones into trash for incineration. Locals who fished near the canal confirmed the water was thick with fish, and the strong current made it a near-perfect disposal site. Every detail pointed to the same conclusion. Zhang Jietong was not a man who lost control. He was a man who planned. And perhaps the most haunting image of all was inside his living room. Ancestral photos on the cabinet, deity statues standing watch, incense burners and Buddhist prayer beads arranged nearby. Every time he carried dismembered body parts out of the bathroom, he passed through that sacred space. Beneath the eyes of gods and ancestors, he felt nothing. That near ritualistic composure was his final, complete severance from the human world. On May 14, 2025, 1 year after his arrest, the first preparatory hearing was held at the Kaohsiung District Court. Victims' families were present. The hearing's purpose was to organize the key points of the case. And if the defendant had chosen to plead guilty, proceedings could have moved quickly toward a verdict. Zhang Jietong had other ideas. He denied everything, just as he always had. He claimed the victims were close friends and insisted he was physically incapable of murder, pointing out that he was shorter than all three women and that any struggle would have been heard by neighbors. When confronted with the body disposal charges, he said he simply rode his bicycle every morning for exercise and never went anywhere near the river. He told the judge directly, "If you believe it, keep investigating. If not, just rule quickly." He announced he wouldn't appeal and asked not to be summoned to court again. Then, in what appeared to be a last-ditch legal maneuver, he revealed that he had previously signed an organ donation agreement with Kaohsiung Medical University, framing himself as a man with no motive for violence, who would even offer his body to science if sentenced to death. It likely won't work. Taiwan's medical community has made clear that organs from death row inmates should not be used as a donor source, and even voluntary offers are almost certain to be rejected by the relevant authorities. In the end, prosecutors laid out their case plainly. Multiple victims, methods of extreme cruelty, deliberate and careful concealment, and not a single moment of remorse. A psychological evaluation confirmed that Zhang suffered from no mental illness. His judgment and self-control during the crimes were fully intact. On that basis, the Kaohsiung District Prosecutor's Office formally requested the court impose the death penalty. The trial will run its course, but the wounds this case leaves behind won't heal when the verdict comes down. This isn't just the story of 3 lives lost and 3 families shattered. It's a warning that stretches back half a century. 25 years behind bars did nothing to extinguish what was inside Zhang Jietong. And that forces us to sit with an uncomfortable truth. For certain deeply malevolent personalities, prison can restrict behavior, but it cannot kill the will. Taiwan has a term for people who've served their time and are re-entering society, deep-rooted individuals. The counseling, monitoring, and supervision of that population is one of the most serious challenges any social safety net can face. Zhang Jietong's story hangs like a question mark over every conversation about rehabilitation and second chances. If the law gave him a second life, then the law and society had an obligation to make sure he never got a third hunt. At the same time, this case shines a harsh light on something quietly growing across the world. Elderly people living alone, starved for connection, vulnerable in ways that predators can exploit. The loneliness behind Miss Huang's property disputes, Miss Chang's park friendships, Ms. Lin's daily walks, all of it became a doorway for a monster in plain sight. Zhang Jietong's story doesn't end with a verdict. The gaps it exposes in oversight and community care, in how we protect the most isolated among us, those gaps remain wide open. Darkness doesn't always lurk in shadows. Sometimes it rides a bicycle through the neighborhood every morning, waves to the neighbors, and looks like the most ordinary old man you've ever seen. Stay aware. Look out for each other. And we'll see you in the next one.